Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving deep into a single, unbelievably dynamic year, 1926. I mean, we often think of the Roaring Twenties as this, this blur of flappers and jazz.
Right, just one big party.
Exactly. But when you stop the clock on 1926, you realize this wasn't just a year of celebration. It was a profound global nexus point.
That's it. That's the crucial insight right there.
Our sources show a year where old empires were finally fading, new technologies were just exploding.
And the foundations of the world we're in now, politically, culturally, were being, violently laid down.
I think you're right. We tend to think about history in decades, But 1926 feels like a historical funnel.
It really does. The sheer velocity of change. I mean, when you look at the day-to-day timeline, it's just staggering.
And you've provided us with this fantastic stack of source material. It covers everything.
Geopolitical earthquakes, fundamental scientific breakthroughs, you name it.
So our mission is to extract those surprising connections and really get to the so what of it all, to give you a high-definition view of how this one year shapes the next century.
Absolutely. It feels like every month delivered some world-altering event.
And often contradictory ones.
Oh, completely. You've got the birth of Queen Elizabeth II and Miles Davis on one hand.
And on the other, you have the silent film era basically being killed by sound and the rise of these brutal European dictatorships.
This here is its own history book.
It really is. So let's begin where the biggest risks and arguably the biggest dreams were playing out.
In the air.
In the air, with the innovation engine just running at full tilt. So the early part of 1926 was really defined by this literal race to conquer the last geographical frontier.
The North Pole.
The North Pole. It's a story of, incredible ambition, but also technological limits and, frankly, historical deception.
The whole world is obsessed with it. It was seen as the ultimate test for early aviation.
And in May 1926, you have this window of just 3 days that saw two monumental claims.
And one of those claims has been permanently stained by doubt ever since.
So the first one, on May 9th, this involved the American explorer Richard E. Byrd and his co-pilot Floyd Bennett. They took off from Spitsbergen, Norway, in the Josephine Ford monoplane.
And they came back as international heroes. They claimed to be the first to fly over the pole.
Parades were held, medals were handed out. It was, the quintessential American adventure story for the era.
But there's always a but.
Yeah.
Even at the time, some experts were a little skeptical.
Really? Right from the start?
Oh, yeah. The flight time Byrd reported 15 hours and 44 minutes. He just raised immediate questions.
Why? What was the issue?
Well, could the monoplane have possibly covered that distance to the pole and back in that time? The math for the aircraft at that period, it just didn't seem to add up.
And this is where the deep dive gets really valuable, because the narrative everyone celebrated in 1926, it started to unravel.
Decades later, yeah, in the 1990s.
The discovery of Byrd's diary in 1996.
That was the smoking gun.
It contained an entry that suggested the plane turned back, about 150 miles short of the pole.
Because of a reported oil leak. And not only that, the navigation records in the diary, they looked off.
What do you mean off?
There appeared to be erasures, adjustments, things that pointed toward a modified route, not a fully successful one.
So he might have fudged the records.
It creates this massive historical question mark. It suggests a major pillar of 20th century exploration mythology was, at best, a fabrication or, maybe a deliberate lie for glory.
Wow. And that really speaks to the pressure on these explorers back then.
Oh, absolutely. The need to be first no matter what.
What's so remarkable, though, is the contrast with what happened just 3 days later. The world got its undisputed achievement.
Correct. But it wasn't with a plane.
No.
On May 12th, Roald Amundsen, a giant of polar history, he, along with Lincoln Ellsworth and Umberto Nobile, definitively flew over the North Pole.
But they used the airship Norge.
And that distinction is vital. Airships, they didn't have the speed of fixed-wing aircraft, but they offered stability and endurance.
Which is exactly what you need for those kinds of conditions.
Exactly. Amundsen's success was undeniable. And it kind of confirmed the utility of airships right at the moment when planes were starting to eclipse them.
So you have this technological competition playing out in real time, but that acceleration in aviation, it was outpacing safety, wasn't it?
Oh, completely. Often leading to tragedy, which brings us to the infamous Orteig Prize.
That was the prize for the first nonstop flight across the Atlantic.
A $25,000 prize. And it fueled this almost reckless ambition.
And the human cost was just brutally illustrated on September 21st.
The French war ace René Fonck.
He attempted to launch his massive, modified Sikorsky S-35 from Roosevelt Field in New York.
And the plane was just overloaded. Way too much fuel, too much equipment.
And our sources described just an immediate tragedy. The plane crashed right on takeoff,
bursting into flames right in front of newsreel cameras, spectators, everyone.
2 of his crew died instantly. Fonck survived, but it was such a public demonstration of how dangerous this new era was.
And how unregulated it was.
Right.
This kind of inherent public danger acted as a catalyst, though. Just a few months before that crash, on May 20th, the U.S. Congress passed the Air Commerce Act.
So you have the Fonck tragedy illustrating the need for regulation.
And the act was the foundational response. It was the critical institutional step.
So what did it actually do?
Well, it initiated the federal licensing system for pilots, for mechanics, and, crucially, for the planes themselves.
So setting standards.
Exactly. Government standards for safety and reliability. It paved the way for commercial air routes, air traffic control. I mean, the entire infrastructure of modern civil aviation.
It moved flying from a daredevil hobby
to a recognized, if still pretty risky, mode of commerce and transportation.
So the desire for glory leads to recklessness, which leads to legislation, all in 1926. Now, let's transition from that highly visible, very dramatic world of early flight to an event that was tiny, quiet, and almost completely ignored.
But which launched the future in a much more literal sense.
Rocketry.
This is one of those profound history happened here and nobody noticed moments.
March 16th in Auburn, Massachusetts, Robert H. Goddard launches the world's first liquid fuel rocket.
Yeah. And when you say launch, you have to be really clear.
This was not a massive spectacle.
Not at all. The flight lasted, 2.5 seconds?
2.5 seconds. It reached an altitude of about 41 feet.
And traveled 184 feet across a field. It was not a show. But structurally, conceptually, it was everything.
Because before this, rockets were just glorified fireworks using solid fuel.
Right, like gunpowder, which gives you this massive but totally uncontrollable thrust.
And the innovation here is the control you get with liquid fuel.
That is the key. Liquid fuels, you use gasoline and liquid oxygen. They allow for metering and controlled combustion.
Which means you can throttle them, you can direct them.
You can scale them up indefinitely. This tiny, uncelebrated launch in 1926 was the direct, singular precursor to the V-2 rockets of World War II.
The Saturn V.
Every modern space vehicle. It was the moment spaceflight went from science fiction to, fundamental engineering principle.
It's just fascinating how you have the flamboyant, messy public world of aviation running parallel to this quiet, disciplined, scientific foundation being laid for rocketry.
But for the average person in 1926, the real revolution wasn't in the sky.
No, it was in their living rooms.
The acceleration in media technology that year fundamentally changed how people saw and heard the world. It created the very concept of a mass audience.
We have to start with the dawn of television. January 26th, the Scottish inventor John Logie Baird demonstrates a mechanical television system in his lab in London.
He was demonstrating it for the Royal Institution, which is significant. It lent credibility. And a reporter from the Times was there.
But the images were primitive, to say the least.
Very crude. Low-resolution flickering, often described as these reddish, blurry silhouettes.
But it worked.
It worked. The core technology, using a spinning Nipkow disc to scan the images, it showed that visual transmission over distances was possible. It was the first public, successful step.
So while that visual media is just taking its first baby steps, audio media is becoming a monolith.
That's a great way to put it. November 15th sees the official opening of the NBC radio network in the United States.
And this was a partnership between, Westinghouse, General Electric, and RCA.
A behemoth. The sheer scale was unprecedented. They launched with a network of 24 interconnected stations.
That centralization is the crucial insight here, I think. Before NBC, radio was often local, kind of chaotic.
Exactly. This formalized radio as a pervasive mass-market medium and, critically, as a tool for national identity.
So everyone could hear the same thing at the same time.
Millions of people simultaneously. Standardized content, standardized advertising, standardized news. It created this concept of a national consciousness in real time.
And while radio was cementing its place, the ultimate form of entertainment film was experiencing, a death knell.
The silent film era, which defined early Hollywood, was about to be obliterated by sound.
August 5th, New York. audiences experienced the Warner Brothers Vitaphone system for the first time.
In the movie Don Juan.
Now, explain Vitaphone. Sound had been tried before, right?
It had, but it was always unreliable, hard to amplify, hard to synchronize. Vitaphone was a sound-on-disc system.
So the sound was on a separate record.
A large phonograph record that was mechanically synchronized with the projector. It was clunky, sure, but it was reliable enough to deliver synchronized music and sound effects.
And that provided an immersion that silent film just couldn't match.
Right. So Don Juan was mostly silent, but it had a fully synchronized score and a few sound effects. It just demonstrated the potential.
And it signaled the beginning of the end.
For the entire silent film industry, they had to scramble to adapt. Within a few years, talkies would dominate, forcing everyone to completely transform their craft.
So just looking back at this first part, 1926 gives us the foundation for space travel, the networked world of NBC, the advent of television, and the death of silent film.
The technological velocity is just. It's not just rapid, it's systemic. It changed the very definition of distance and communication.
So while the world was innovating its way into the future, the political landscape was busy dismantling the fragile post-war democracies all across Europe.
It was an extremely volatile year that really solidified the trend toward authoritarian rule.
And the most obvious place to start is with the systematic dismantling of democracy in Italy, led by Benito Mussolini.
He was already a formidable force, but 1926 is the year his power becomes truly totalitarian. He was in control, but he used crises, real or manufactured, to accelerate that power grab.
Right, like the failed assassination attempt on him on April 7th.
Exactly. Whether it was genuine or exaggerated, he definitely used that event as a pretext to just tighten the screws.
The fascist movement used it to justify a massive crackdown on all political opposition.
And the decrees that followed are just terrifying in their speed and scope.
They show this clear legislative intent to wipe out any checks on his power.
Look at the timeline. October 23rd, women are banned from holding public office.
Which reversed some nascent progressive reforms.
Completely. Then, just over a month later, November 25th, the death penalty is reestablished, specifically for anti-state crimes.
Which is a massive psychological deterrent.
And the very next day, November 26th, all Italian communist deputies are arrested.
So he just systematically eliminated organized opposition in parliament.
It's a clear sequence, moving from charismatic leadership to absolute dictatorship, all codified in law.
And it wasn't an isolated trend, was it?
Not at all. Across Europe, you see this disillusionment with the perceived inefficiency of new democracies. It led to military-backed takeovers.
Like in Poland and Portugal.
Poland is a classic example. You have a national hero, Marshal Józef Piłsudski, who basically decides that democracy is failing the state.
So he launches the May coup between May 12th and 14th.
He seizes control, transforms the government into this military-dominated authoritarian regime. He argued that the political divisions and economic crises required a strong, unifying hand.
So it's this narrative of the democratic experiment isn't working, we need a strong man.
Precisely. And in Portugal, the instability was even more acute. They had 2 coups that year.
2 in 1 year.
The May 28th coup installed the Ditadura Nacional, ending their volatile First Republic. Then General Oscar Carmona takes power on July 9th.
And this wasn't really about one charismatic figure like Mussolini.
No, it was a symptom of complete political exhaustion and economic collapse. The military just stepped in to impose order. And that military rule would last in various forms for nearly 50 years.
And Greece had its own whirlwind adventure in dictatorship.
A very short-lived one. Theodoros Pangalos declares himself dictator in January, tries to legitimize it with a sham election in April.
But he's ousted in August, and the whole thing ends on August 25th.
The pattern is consistent, though. Swift seizure of power, suppression of opposition, and the military asserting it's the only institution that can restore national health. 1926 is the year this just becomes rampant.
Okay, moving from the rise of strongmen to the rise of mass movements, 1926 was also home to one of the 20th century's biggest industrial confrontations.
The UK general strike.
A monumental 9-day clash that brought the entire nation to a standstill.
The core issue was the plight of the coal miners. The government had already declared a state of emergency on April 30th.
Because the mine owners were demanding longer hours and significant wage cuts.
Up to 13% in some cases. This wasn't just about wages, though. This was about the dignity and the economic viability of an entire industrial class.
So the general strike kicks off on May 4th.
And you have millions of workers rail, transport, steel, printing, all walking out in solidarity with the miners.
And the government's response.
They mobilized volunteers and the military to maintain essential services, and they framed the strike not as a labor dispute, but as a constitutional crisis, a challenge to the authority of the state.
But the general strike itself was called off after only 9 days, on May 12th.
It was. But the miners themselves, they stayed on strike for months.
They held out until October 12th.
And they lost completely. They were forced to accept the longer hours, the lower pay. It effectively gutted the power of the Miners' Federation. It was a bitter, bitter defeat for the British labor movement.
So you have this massive, prolonged struggle highlighting deep industrial turmoil in the UK. And yet, running completely counter to this, we have an announcement from Detroit that just seems to come from another planet.
This is maybe the ultimate 1920s juxtaposition.
On September 25th, Henry Ford announces the 8-hour, 5-day work week for his workforce.
While the UK is locked down by striking workers, an industrial titan in the US unilaterally establishes the modern concept of the weekend.
And Ford's motivation wasn't purely altruistic, was it? It was about efficiency.
Yeah, and consumerism. He understood that workers needed not only time to rest, but also free time to consume the products they were building.
So they'd have time to drive their Ford cars.
Exactly. A 40-hour week meant happier workers and, critically, workers with weekends free to go out and be consumers. It was industrial engineering applied to leisure time.
That's fascinating. Now, shifting our focus away from the industrialized West, 1926 was also drastically rewriting the map of Asia.
Huge transitions in China and Japan, especially.
Let's start with Japan. On December 25th, Emperor Taisho dies.
Which was a significant moment. His reign, the Taisho era, was characterized by a push toward democratic principles, relatively liberal politics.
And the very next day, December 26th, his son Hirohito ascends the throne. The Showa period begins.
And that's a tectonic shift. It signaled the end of that tentative move toward Taisho democracy. The early Showa era saw the rapid rise of militarism and extreme nationalism.
So this transition in leadership marked a profound shift in national ideology.
It really accelerated Japan's path toward expansion and conflict in the decades to come.
And at the same time, in China, internal conflict was just escalating dramatically.
On July 1st, the Kuomintang, led by Chiang Kai-shek, starts the Northern Expedition.
This was a massive military campaign
aimed at unifying China by crushing the various northern warlords who had carved up the country. This effort defined the trajectory of modern China.
And it coincided with other localized victories, like Zhang Zuolin's army capturing Beijing on April 17th.
The whole situation was incredibly fluid and violent. The Northern Expedition was this attempt to impose unity from the South, and it set the stage for the immense civil and international wars that followed.
Okay, so amidst all this internal volatility, 1926 did offer a brief, maybe fleeting moment of hope for global cooperation.
It did. The Structure for Peace, the League of Nations, gained a crucial member on September 8th.
The German Weimar Republic.
Which was enormously symbolic. Germany, a former enemy, was being brought back into the fold. It lent crucial legitimacy to the post-war peace structure.
But Germany was also hedging its bets a little, weren't they? They weren't just looking west.
Not at all. That's why we have to note the Treaty of Berlin, signed on April 24th between Germany and the Soviet Union.
Which pledged neutrality if either country was attacked.
And that was pretty unsettling to France and Britain. It showed Germany was willing to play both sides, undermining the anti-communist spirit of the Western powers.
And then there's this monumental internal shift within the British Empire itself.
The Balfour Declaration. Approved on November 15th, this was foundational for the modern Commonwealth.
Because it declared that the self-governing dominions, Canada, Australia, South Africa, were equal in status.
And independent from the UK, though united by a common allegiance to the Crown, it was this crucial structural recognition of sovereignty.
The beginning of the end for the centralized imperial model.
Exactly. And finally, a true moral victory that showed the League of Nations trying to live up to its ideals.
The Slavery Convention.
Approved on September 25th. It formally abolished all types of slavery. And the significance here isn't just chattel slavery, but forced labor, debt bondage, serfdom.
So it was a much broader definition.
It was a monumental, internationally coordinated effort to establish fundamental human rights standards, which is incredible considering how many political systems were crumbling at the exact same time.
It's such a paradox. A world becoming more fractured politically with the rise of dictators, while also making these leaps toward institutional peace and human rights.
It's a high-stakes, deeply contradictory year.
Okay, moving from geopolitics, let's dive into the moments that really define the public imagination, the cultural icons, the celebrity scandals.
And the raw power of nature and organized crime.
You have to start with the literary launch that continues to define childhood for millions.
Winnie the Pooh.
A. Milne's book, published October 14th in London, it just instantly created a cultural touchstone.
And it provided this much-needed escapism,
Yeah.
a gentle, imaginative style that was a stark contrast to the often brutal world of the 1920s.
Speaking of narrative, 1926 gave us one of the most remarkable coincidences in celebrity history.
The two disappearances.
Two extremely high-profile, bizarre disappearances within 6 months.
The first was evangelist Amy Semple McPherson in May, an immensely influential figure. She vanishes while visiting a beach in Venice, California.
And the media frenzy was instantaneous. She was a national celebrity.
Nearly a month later, she reappears in Mexico. She claims she was kidnapped, tortured, held for ransom.
A sensational story.
But the police investigation and public scrutiny led many to believe the story was fabricated, maybe to cover up an affair or just burn out.
Then, in December, we have the bizarre disappearance of the queen of the detective story herself, Agatha Christie.
She vanished from her home in Surrey, left behind this mystery that, even she might have struggled to write.
And she was found 11 days later.
At a Harrogate hotel, checked in under the surname of her husband's mistress.
Oh.
She claimed amnesia, never fully explained it. What stands out is just this double dose of high-stakes, publicly consumed mystery in the same year.
Away from scandal, though, 1926 also delivered a major moment in sports, a societal barrier broken.
On August 6th, the American Gertrude Ederlo became the first woman to successfully swim the English Channel.
From France to England. And only a handful of men had ever done it before her.
And she didn't just break the gender barrier, she shattered the record.
She beat the existing men's record by almost 2 hours.
It was a massive international moment. She proved decisively that women were capable of surpassing men in these areas of extreme athletic performance. She got a ticker tape parade when she came home.
Speaking of public reaction, let's look back at the infancy of broadcasting and that hilarious story of the panic it caused.
Oh, this is a great one. January 16th, the BBC aired a radio play, a satire by Ronald Knox about a workers' revolution in London.
It was meant to be a parody of exaggerated newspaper reports.
But the public, many of whom were brand new to radio, completely missed the nuance, or the announcement that it was satire.
So they thought it was real.
They absolutely did. It caused widespread panic, people calling police stations, flooding emergency lines, genuinely believing London was under attack.
It's a perfect early example of the sheer uncritical power of new media.
The immediacy of radio made the unreal sound completely real.
Now let's pivot sharply to the brutal realities, the dark side of the Roaring '20s.
In Chicago, the rise of Al Capone was hitting its apex.
And the violence was escalating to industrial levels. Capone was based in Cicero, Illinois, which was basically his own personal kingdom.
And on September 20th, the North Side Gang, led by Bugs Moran, tried to assassinate him. They drove past his headquarters, the Hawthorne Inn.
And sprayed the building with over 1,000 rounds of machine gun fire in broad daylight.
1,000 rounds. It just illustrates the total breakdown of civic order.
And the cold-blooded brutality of the gang wars.
Capone was eating lunch, but he escaped by diving to the floor. The event just cemented his reputation for power and ruthlessness.
And the power of nature was equally brutal that year. On September 18th, the Great Miami Hurricane.
A catastrophic event. The scale of the devastation in Miami was immense. Sources say over 100 people were killed.
And the property damage, when you adjust it for today, is something like $100 billion.
It's staggering. It effectively ended the massive speculative real estate boom that had characterized Florida in the early 20s. A violent correction.
And there was another one just a month later in Cuba that killed 650 people.
Yeah, underscoring the ongoing human costs.
Finally, we can't overlook the less televised, but equally tragic, large-scale disasters.
On March 14th, the El Varilla train accident in Costa Rica. An overloaded train derailed on a bridge, killing 248 people.
Just horrific. And across the world on October 16th, a devastating military accident in China.
An ammunition explosion on the troop ship, Guangdong. It killed an estimated 1,200 people.
It's a grim reminder of the high human cost of the internal conflicts raging in China at the time.
To really capture this idea of 1926 as a pivot point, we have to look at who was taking their final bow And who is just making their entrance?
The pantheon of the departed. These are figures who represent the end of the 19th century spirit.
And the silent film era.
Let's start with the one death that felt like the end of an entire generation of stage showmanship. Harry Houdini.
He died on Halloween, October 31st. A ruptured appendix. It was this cruel irony for the master of illusion.
The one trick he couldn't escape was the frailty of the human body.
His death really ended an era of that highly stylized, sensational magic.
We also lost huge figures who defined modern art and architecture. Claude Monet died on December 5th.
The definitive end of the initial wave of Impressionism.
And on June 10th, the iconic Spanish architect Antoni Gaudí died after being hit by a trolley.
Still working on his magnum opus, the Sagrada Familia. His death marked the close of the Catalan modernism movement.
In pop culture, two figures who represented earlier forms of mass media left us. Rudolph Valentino.
The definitive silent film heartthrob. He died on August 23rd at only 31.
And his death caused mass hysteria.
An intense media spectacle. It was the end of that idealized silent screen male hero.
Then we have Annie Oakley, the famed American sharpshooter. She died on November 3rd.
And she really represents the closing of the frontier and the Gilded Age's traveling shows.
The link to American history is even more explicit with the death of Robert Todd Lincoln on July 26th.
The last surviving son of President Abraham Lincoln. His death directly links the Civil War generation
to the high-energy modern jazz age, a literal bridge between two vastly different centuries.
We also lost influential thinkers like the poet Rainer Maria Rilke.
And in science, the world lost Heike Kamerlingh-Onnes, the Dutch physicist and Nobel laureate who discovered superconductivity.
A pivotal figure in early 20th century physics.
Okay, now let's flip the page to the class of 1926. The future icons whose births this year would just utterly shape the 20th century.
It's a stunning historical harvest. The sheer density of future stars is astonishing.
Let's start with monarchy and global leaders. Queen Elizabeth II was born on April 21st.
Destined to reign for over 70 years. You also have Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, future president of France, and Jiang Zemin, the future leader of China.
And the political agitator who would shape the entire Western Hemisphere's relationship with the U.S.
Fidel Castro, August 13th. And on the other side of the ideological spectrum, Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Buddhist monk and peace activist.
An incredible contrast right there.
And then, in culture and entertainment, the roll call is just phenomenal. This is the year modern music was born.
Chuck Berry, October 18th, the father of rock and roll.
And Miles Davis, May 26th. The pioneer of cool jazz. Those two alone fundamentally redefined the sound of the post-war world.
And add to that the literary giants. Allen Ginsberg, the voice of the Beat generation.
And Harper Lee, who wrote To Kill a Mockingbird, shaped the American conscience around justice.
And the masters of comedy and visual media, David Attenborough.
Leslie Nielsen, Jerry Lewis, and Mel Brooks. That group defines the style and humor of the next 50 years.
It's a remarkable convergence. The people who defined the sound, the conscience, and the humor of the 20th century all arriving in the same 12 months.
And one quiet entry in our source material, but one that hints at future challenges. 1926 saw the initial chemical synthesis of phencyclidine PCP, angel dust. Its disruptive impact wouldn't be known for decades, but the compound itself entered the world in this year.
Wow. And just before we wrap up, let's quickly acknowledge the intellectual achievements honored at the time, the Nobel Prizes.
They give us a final intellectual snapshot. Jean-Baptiste Perrin won for physics, Theodor Svedberg for chemistry.
And critically, the Peace Prize was shared by diplomats Aristide Briand of France and Gustav Stresemann of Germany.
For their monumental efforts in negotiating the Locarno treaties, a hopeful symbol amidst all the geopolitical volatility we've been talking about.
So if we connect all these disparate threads back to the bigger picture, the profound lesson of 1926 is that the world just never transforms in a neat, orderly way.
Not at all. It was a year of profound, simultaneous global realignment. You see dictatorships solidifying power in Italy and Poland, pushing the continent toward conflict.
While at the same time, you have these foundational principles of global cooperation being established, Germany joining the League, the Slavery Convention.
The political and structural fragility was matched only by the sheer technological velocity.
The first liquid fuel rocket launch, the birth of the NBC network, the end of the silent film era.
All happening as the UK was gripped by its largest ever industrial strike, and Chicago was being shredded by machine gun fire.
History is rarely sequential. It's a volatile collision.
Exactly. The sheer magnitude of creation and destruction, celebration and upheaval, it proves that the 20th century stopped preparing and started happening in 1926.
That's a great way to put it.
So consider this. The year that saw the birth of global cultural icons like Chuck Berry and Miles Davis, shaping the very sound and rhythm of the next half-century, also marked the first known failed assassination attempt on Mussolini, which led directly to the brutal consolidation of fascist power.
Creation and destruction all at once.
What stands out to you most about this volatile collision of innovation and chaos, and how do you think that constant historical contradiction defines the world we inherited?